Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the special finance meeting of March 7th, 2024. I acknowledge the Shiano and Sauk First Nations on whose land I live, work, and play. This acknowledgement is only one small part of supporting Indigenous communities, and we continue each day to listen, learn, and act to support truth and reconciliation. Please be sure to have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. Committee, are there any additions to the agenda? We have some pinks, which are letters from our community. We'll put that into correspondence. Number 4. Move to adopt Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Public participation. Is there anyone in the community that would like to speak? If you would like to, please step up and state your name and the street in which you live. When you speak at the mic, I ask that you be respectful in your presentation to council, staff, and the people in the gallery this afternoon. Thank you.
Leonore Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. I have done a little comparison of many of Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands for the actual fire departments, because I worked with them for 25 years, the volunteer fire department. This may sound a little off topic a touch, but if anyone has ever gone over and gone to St. Paul's Hospital, which is the busiest hospital for downtown, and you've stayed at the hotel across from it, and it has the windows out on it, and every 5 or 10 minutes the sirens come on. So I have done a little example of Isu Fire Department. They don't have dwellings over top of there. They have enough for a couple people staying there. Cedar, which is a volunteer fire department, which I'm sure the mayor knows. We have been volunteers there at that situation for a long time. The young men are volunteers, and then they usually go to the university in Nanaimo, and they're still staying as volunteers, and then they become firemen somewhere. And so I've done one of Nanaimo, because my mother lives in Nanaimo. I've done Courtney, and I've done Campbell River as well. And so it's very interesting when I presented the fact that we think about building a layer of somewhere for people to stay, especially mothers and children, that people say, my God, the siren would be going off all the time or some of the time, terrifying for most of the people. And, you know, what are you thinking about, Matilda? And that is sort of a survey of right up to Campbell River and north of a lot of the little places, a lot of the volunteers. I did Cowichan. I spoke to the former chief of the volunteer Cowichan. They just can't believe that you would even think of having accommodation for people. I know it's politically motivated to provide our part for people, but over top of a fire department is insane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I have a few questions and comments. I question the need for contract planning services to increase from $72,000 in 2014 or 2024 to $123,000 this coming or in 2025, and continuing to increase to $131,000 in 2028. The question is why? What work has increased to such an extent that there is a need for a full-time person? Is this a consequence of bringing on an engineer? If this is the case, the question still remains as to why, and why full-time. I am a bit concerned that the district staffing levels are significantly increasing, especially at the top end, and it looks like a top-heavy administration for a small organization. Why did contract planning services exceed the 2023 budgeted amount of $55,000, by almost $45,000. Why are 2024 planning costs of $72,000 projected to increase to over $123,000? Is there a complete review of the OCP being planned? On the school budget site, what is the difference between school contracted services and janitorial? Together, these two items have increased from $12,000 in 2023 to $55,000 in 2024. The increase seems really excessive. And why have janitorial costs alone increased so much from $9,000 in 2023 to $27,840 in 2024? $328,000 has been projected in 2024 for one-time costs that are drawn from surplus. Some of these projects, such as organizational review, crossing guards, laptops, do not appear to me to have been, do not appear to be completed at this time. Some of these surplus funds should be reallocated to replenish reserves. Why is an organizational review costing $50,000 being budgeted for 2024? Surely, for goodness sakes, the size of the district administration is not so large that council has a good idea of the effectiveness and what needs to be done to address the issue. I am concerned that this, because of the increase in staff, it will require additional support staff to support a top-heavy management structure. Where is the dollar amount allocated for Sue Lynn's settlement, as well as the cost for Bob's move? These are taxpayer dollars, and we have a right to know how much has been spent. And why is electronic signage still in the budget, rising to a total of $332,000 in 2028? This is an expense that the district does not need. Regular signage is quite sufficient. Thank you very much.
Council, Chair, Eric White, 4290 Chosen Road. I think I just would like to maybe add some perspective and put forward, like, Mayor Little, she's so correct in that people are our biggest assets, and when she wants to celebrate them with the celebrations, that's fantastic. People are our biggest assets in this community. And I think they are, literally. Everyone here is a people who pays the taxes. They are the asset. So there's got to be a number somewhere where the people balance, there's enough people in our community to pay the taxes. There's got to be a special point where we don't end up with stoplights, but we're all not drowning in our own tax dollars. And I'd love to know where that is, because if that's the asset we're using for financing everything, we should have a real clear understanding of, what's the best place for our community in terms of, keeping it rural and paying the bills. And in terms of the firefighters, they're like another one of our biggest assets. They brought in $500,000 last year by going off to fight fires, and they're volunteers. They're one-time cost. So basically, even if the turnover rate is 3 to 5 years, there's got to be another sweet spot in the number where hiring them and having them dissipate at a rate and come in at a rate where they can have 10 of them to go off to fight forest fires and have 10 of them to hang out here until we have a fire, and it's safe for us, and we're making money on firefighters, right? It's a one-time investment. And that's the thing we need to really I think is important to sort out, is how do the people we have in our community leverage as assets and make us the best bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Daryl Adrian. I've lived in Machosen for 20 years, and I've never really been involved in any of this, but I've noticed our taxes are going up a lot, and now I've got an interest in this. It looks like they're going up about 4 to 5 times the rate of inflation. It's shocking to me, and many of my friends and colleagues are now becoming very aware of this, and we're getting a little bit PO'd about it, to be quite frank. So I'm here now to let you know that we are watching, listening, and we're going to be getting engaged in this because it's getting a little out of control. And when rates are going up at these kind of rates, where does it end? I mean, everyone will have to leave Machosen at some point. Luckily, a lot of us people are mortgage-free or things like that, but not everybody. So anyway, I just want to come here and let you guys know that I'm not happy, and we have to be a lot better in watching what we spend. If I ran my business by trying to jack prices up 15-20% a year, I wouldn't be in business. So we need to be aware that there is consequences when you raise things. Whenever there's a yin, there's a yang. So you need to be aware of that. And I will be watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
June Reimer, 4730 Machosen Road. I think I lived here.
Microphone.
Oh, hello microphone. Is that working?
Into it.
I'm trying.
You can bend it.
Okay, June Reimer. Well, I have not been coming to enough meetings, and I think that it is pertinent that we all take an interest and be here. So I'm glad that people are realizing that this is their council and that they all should have a say. It's quite helpful that way. I just have a couple of points to make because I heard about the fire hall thing. I might not have all the details, but I read this afternoon in the Muse, and I have to say that the first thing that struck me is if you were hoping to have housing for responders, women and children fleeing violence, the last thing you need are sirens. Like, it just, for housing, it does not make sense. I hear them off Kangaroo and Tiswell, and I grew up with them at Saanishton. It's not that big a deal, but this is really, in my mind, very foolish. I was wondering how many other small fire departments have considered something like this. Again, I do know that there are things coming from the provincial government that we need to look at. But are we actually paying money to do a study to do this without actually getting an idea? How badly does the fire hall need to be rebuilt? And in what frame of time? That's what I would like to know. Are we actually spending money on a study before we actually have people in Machosen agreeing? Perhaps there should be a referendum. So anyway, Trucks Fire Hall, that just blew me away that we would do that. We have a school to rent, and we're having enough trouble renting it. I am all for that we bought the school. I'm not complaining about it, but we need to figure out how to do things without hiring a bunch more staff. If we do all of these things, I can see a lot more staff coming in, taxes just continuing to go up. So 15% is what we've been talking about, but once we start this and we build, and then we need maybe an addiction center, well, who are we hoping to bring into the area? It's just a little far off. Once we figure out how to rent the school and make money, then maybe we can look at something else, but a fire hall with grooming and housing and sirens. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jillian Mayer, Rocky Point Road. I'm disappointed in the Muse article because I think it doesn't represent what the fire hall is proposing. They're trying to get money for a feasibility study grant money so that taxpayers don't have to pay for it. And one of the ways is to tap into housing, which is like a big thing right now. So if you say that you're looking into housing, then you can get money. So it's disappointing that people aren't getting information that's accurate. I'm here to speak on behalf of the fire department. I support the fire department. When I have an emergency, I want to be able to phone the fire department and have emergency responders, first responders, stroke, cardiac arrest, uncontrolled bleeding, fire, someone caught in a fire, accident, farm accident, any kind of danger. I want to know, like, we live in a small community. We're far away from ambulance. We're far away from hospital. I don't want to be far away from first responders. And I want low insurance rates for my house in case of fire. So I looked at ESUC. ESUC is looking at having to downgrade their fire department because they don't have enough volunteers, and the volunteers they do have aren't trained at a high enough standard. So apparently they can't go into buildings to fight fires, they can only fight fires from outside the buildings, which means that their requirement is only to protect the fire from spreading from one property to another property, not to save the actual residence or building that's on fire. Well, I would like the firefighters to be fighting inside my building and trying to protect my home and my property. If you don't have enough volunteers, your fire department doesn't have a rating high enough to do that. ESUC is looking, if they don't get enough volunteers trained at the highest level, the minutes from their last meeting said that they were going to downgrade, and that would result in a 400% increase in their home insurance because they wouldn't have protection in case of fire. Our fire department works really hard to make sure that we have hydrants, that we have volunteers, that we have well-trained volunteers that can go inside houses and fight, that they have training opportunities to fight in other districts and to deploy in the summer so that they can get training, so that they're at the highest level, so that our insurance rates are at the lowest level. Also, I assume that our training program, because it's so crackerjack, is the reason we have full number of volunteers in our fire department. Because again, ESUC doesn't have enough volunteers. The Highlands website publishes that they have fewer, significantly fewer than the minimum of 30 volunteers that they require, and they would prefer to have 35. And they warn residents that they'll have slow response because they don't have, especially in the daytime, any volunteers able to respond. So, fire department, first responders, health and safety, knowing, well, I think the number was that 34 minutes is how long our first responders spend on average with someone waiting for an ambulance. 34 minutes without a first responder there to help or to do resuscitation or to do any of the things that you need done in an emergency. 34 minutes on your own without help is a very, very, very long time.
Swatsky, Kabir Road. I don't think anybody is talking against the fire department. I think we've all got very high regard for the training and the people who give their time there. The problem is the scope of the building. Once you build something like that, you have to maintain it, you have to staff it, the costs are going to be astronomical. We're a municipality of 5,000 people, which we all say with a bit of a chuckle. Colwood isn't that far away. Yes, it takes a while for the volunteer fire department to get to a house, but quite honestly, Royal Bay is not that far away, and there are going to be a whole lot of suites in there for rent. I look at Royal Bay as the buffer between the city and Metchosin. Let them build all they want, but I think when you were running for council, you promised to be fiscally responsible, and you promised also to keep our population down and to keep building out of Metchosin as much as possible. And I really wish that you would just try to save some money and try to stop spending money, because most of it isn't needed.
Thank you.
Hi, Wendy Mitchell, Woody Beach Road. This is a really tough year for you guys. Taxes are going up in every municipality in BC, what with inflation, etc. So we can see that taxes are going to go up, but not as much as you guys are suggesting, because you're going for a really big wish list. And wish lists in budgeting can be put off over the years. First of all, the first thing I'd like to see as a wish list is a better sound system in this joint, because I have barely been able, well, I can't hear anyone that's spoken. My ears just aren't good enough. I even have my little thing turned right up. So where's the transparency and communication with the the voters? And there's other people that don't even bother about coming to meetings because they can't hear. I just spout off, as you know. So I have to ask, where's the process with this fire hall? There was money budgeted last year for a feasibility study. Where is that? Where's that money? Where's that feasibility? We've been through fire hall fights here before. How many of you remember how many trees were cut down? How many people chained themselves to those trees? And so nothing like this is going to happen easily. But housing? Has everybody read our OCP? Mr. Payette, you're the newest one here. Have you got it memorized? Because it's just not there. It should be thrown out. Really, the idea is not there unless you completely rezone, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's the process that bothers me. It's just, and then I have a few other things to complain about too. Like, do we need more flashing lights? Do we need, how about roadside trails? Do we really need this roadside trail this year? The Duke Road one? Like, is it this year that has to be done? Why not a little down the road? Wish lists, a little down the road. It's a great idea, but God, there's so many things. And of course, the biggest thing is the fire chief asking for a helper at $65K a year. You know what? The fire chief is doing so much right now. Maybe she should just stay in that office and do a little delegating. Maybe not take on so much. Because we can't afford that. We can't afford it. We can't afford it this year. Maybe another year. That's all I can say. Rein yourselves in, folks. Think about it. And we certainly don't need housing over a fire hall. It just doesn't work. We don't have the plumbing, we don't have, the sewers, we don't have, there's no place for people to shop, it's ridiculous, just ridiculous. And besides, Machosen has always had secondary suites, and now we have secondary housing. So how many of you have suites in your house that are not being rented out? Firefighters can go in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Brett Donaldson, Challister Court. I've attended council meetings for over 30 years, and certainly in that time frame I've never experienced or witnessed any council pick on the fire department. So I think that some folks come to the mic not understanding where these budget numbers come from, and this is in defense of our council. You receive a budget, and this year it started around 15 and now it's 7.1. It sure would have been nice to be there before now, because what's happened is these folks are here because everybody's looking at 2 digits, and now we're down to 7.1. That's awesome. But couldn't we have started that way in the beginning of the year? with our wants and our needs and carve things up and not put you guys in a bad spot. You guys are in the firing range here. It's crappy. Regarding first responders, there was a group of women, no men, women that got together a couple of years ago and lobbied BC Ambulance to get our calls back. So I think the premise that maybe those are at jeopardy, certainly I don't think so. They worked very hard, and I think it's a compliment to those folks. They spent a lot of hours doing that. So the whole concept of first responders being threatened, I don't see that. I'm 110% behind the fire department. I was a volunteer myself. I spent 35 years in the fire service. So I completely understand that running a department is definitely a challenge. When it comes to operational issues regarding the new firefighter positions, I won't comment on that, but what I will comment on is there's some reoccurring suggestions that our fire chief went to a call by herself. And certainly, I think that that is a problem. I know we all want to help people, but when we're responding to a well-known high-risk address, I think we have to step back. I think everybody in our neighborhood certainly knows about that place. It's been going on up there for years. So with respect to the chief, I know she wants to help folks out. Don't go in. Don't do it. I'd be willing to help the chief write a standard operating guideline to help out with that. That was my job at Saanich. I was the training officer and safety officer. If she needs help drafting a standard operating guideline to maybe let her young people, men and women of the department, stay safe, just wait. We don't need to charge into events that are risky. Don't do it. Certainly, when it comes to staffing, I'm not going to pick on our last senior staffers. They're gone now. But a part of the predicament we're in with the fire department manning is not having the ability to use our public works as cross-trained people. We lost 2 guys or gals out of that department. And that was a model I believe the fire chief spoke to. There was award winning. So maybe our new CAO, if we do lose a position in that department, that we look at somebody that can also provide firefighter during the day. Lastly, Duke Road, roadside trail. I was the trails coordinator for 5 years. There's a trails master plan. Certainly Duke Road isn't very high on the scale. There's opportunities along the Chosen Road. There was thousands of dollars spent between the first Duke and, or Chapel Heights, pardon me, and Duke Road as you head towards Colwood. There's filter cloth, there's gravel screenings, and that was done in conjunction with the water board when they put a water line in. Rarely I see anybody walking down there. So maybe we need to introduce those folks to that connector off of Chapel Heights. Thank you.
Avril Yocum, Windfall Road. I don't know if I ask this now or partly through the budget. I'm really pleased to see the school used again for courses. But I'm having trouble with the budget, finding the revenue and expenses for those courses. So if you can answer me now or budget time as it's discussed would be great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the reports on page 3. The 2024-2028 draft 5-year financial plan. I ask the CAO to give this report, please.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, tonight or this afternoon, we have the memo that I presented on the updates from the previous finance committee meeting.
It's really hard to hear.
We need a new sound system. How's that, better?
Yeah, you gotta talk right on.
All right, through the chair.
Yeah, that was. Thank you.
Tonight, this afternoon, we will go through the memo that I presented for the committee regarding the updates to the operating budget from our previous committee meeting. And I also have some information on surplus. We can discuss one-time items and the capital budget worksheet. So there's quite a bit to do tonight. I'd like to get started on the operating budget, page 3, if I may.
3, yeah.
Okay, so based on our previous discussion, there's 4 items that have been amended in the operating budget. We have been able to revise some revenue estimates upward based on current information. So that would be investment revenue. So that's our return on investments that we're receiving on the better interest rates that are out there these days. So that's $50,000 up. And then we decided, or council decided, to look at changing 15,000. I might be getting ahead of myself there. So the salt and snow budget, we reversed 15,000. So you'll see that in the budget. Building permit revenue is up from basically doing a little review on the revenue from last year. And the vehicle recovery chargeback, we have reviewed that line item with 2023 actuals. And the technical issue, we're showing the housing initiative grant money in a separate one-time account rather than adding it to the planner contract. And so the total net reduction in the budget is $30,000, as you can see in the memo. So those are the changes from the previous meeting on the operating budget. There is one item I wanted to talk about that I was able to look at, which is on page 25. And if we can go to that page. So now we're starting to receive all the requisition information from CRB and the West Shore Recreation and Library. And actually, I think Councillor Gray had this question. Good question. So for the West Shore requisition, last year was 132. There is an increase this year of 0.5%, so that item has to be adjusted up to $436,000. So that's a $4,000, basically a $4,000 increase there based on the current information I got today. And the library requisition, I believe it'll be similar, about 0.5% increase, but I noticed that we were over in the shared cost from our projection last year. So I'm recommending at this point that amount is suffice. But if I get any information more next week, we can discuss it. But I believe that we're okay on that line item for requisitions. Other than that, no changes from previously.
Okay. Okay, I ask the committee for some input on anything that might be outstanding for you on our operating budget. Councillor Gray.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just wondering about this reduction to the snow clearing budget of $15,000. Since the last meeting, I took a look through some of the records we had, and I see that our interim CEO was advising that we actually increase this budget this year in order that we feed the reserves, because the reserves are down, and the reserves are used in the event that we have a lot of storms, we have a place to dip for money. And so I'm not entirely clear whether or not we should make that reduction. I realize it's recommended, but I found that memo since the recommendation was made. So the idea is our reserves are depleting. If we have a bad snow year, we won't have the money. It's something that will repeat during our meeting here. I'll be raising it a bunch of times about different dollar values that have been so severely reduced. Some of them are much more marked than this. And then how do we deal with keeping our reserves in balance? I wonder if you have a comment about that, Mr. Payette.
I don't. I mean, the last time we met, we talked about the snow clearing budget, if I recall, and we analyzed it over a 5-year average, if I remember, and we came up with a figure that was more suitable. There is a reserve in place if there's, a nasty snowstorm, if we go above budget. So I don't know what else I can say about that. But I can take the question and review it.
Sure, I guess it's the memo dated June 24, 2023 that suggests that given the relatively small amount in the snow clearing budget, we should perhaps be increasing the snow clearing budget this year in order to, because if we don't use the money, it'll go into the reserve and feed it in for next year. And so I think that's worth a review. Idea being here, of course, that I'm, like others, concerned about our tax rate and keeping it as low as possible, but at the same time, making sure we don't cut the services that our community so enjoy.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I have to say I'm comfortable with what Mr. Payette has proposed in terms of the snow clearing budget, and at some point there should be a bit of a methodology that we apply to doing things like projecting for unknown costs. So I'm comfortable with where it is. I'm looking at the reserve report from last year, and this may be dated, but I think it says here there's $70,000 in the snow clearing or snow and storm reserve. Maybe that's gone down a little bit, but to me that's that would be a healthy figure in terms of getting us through the first year, and if we had to build it up. But it sounds like it's almost something we should do on an ongoing basis, is what is the running 5-year average? Or maybe look again at what the methodology is, but I think Mr. Payette has started that process right now, so. Yeah.
So for clarity, Mr. Payette, in June, will we be working on the reserves? Or will it be sooner than that? That's what we did around that time last year, I think.
Well, I already started working on the reserves, so
that's fine.
To be honest, it's myself and our analyst, so we're working on them now. And yeah, in June we can most definitely go through the reserves with the committee. Myself too, I need to learn more about. I know what's in the reserves, but I need to get through at least a year to understand fully what a full operating budget means to the district. But in the interim, I believe we're in good shape with our budget, and there is good reserves in place. My thought is to project out 5 to 10 years on reserves, like it is with council. So that'll just take me a bit of time.
Councillor Gray.
Maybe my suggestion then, we are of course down, as you're pointing out, Councillor Shukin, through the chair, at $70,000, and we're meant to be somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. So we can always say, well, we'll change that to fit the circumstance, but I think the numbers were set up previously in order to keep us in a good situation. So maybe my suggestion would be to, when we look at the 2025 budget, let's add that money back in so it's available next year to feed our reserve and to go forward. We'd have the experience then to know what's what. So if the committee's okay with that, I think I can live with that. Just make sure we put it back in so we see what this reduction this year means to us.
Mm-hmm.
then if that's agreeable, then the next item would be the signs budget. I'm not entirely clear on this. We have the additional $15,000 for signs on page 22, I think. And we also have an additional $20,000 for electronic signs, and we heard from, I think it was Jim McPherson, they're asking about that question. And the $20,000 climbs all the way to 2028 when it's $332,000. Could we get some clarification just about that? The signs particularly, do we need to increase by 15,000? And then the second question is about electronic signs, both the $20,000 commitment and then this larger commitment in years out.
I can maybe tackle that one.
Yes.
From my knowledge so far is with the staffing and the cost of maintenance of the electronic signs, we have allocated a line item on their timesheets so that if they're spending time driving out to a sign, repairing it, and then driving back, that's accounted for now on their pay sheets, and that's why there's that funding there. So that's the offset. And I believe the $15,000 is set in place for potentially some new signage, if I recall. Is that correct?
Councillor, do you have a comment on that? You're the sign person.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the 15,000, as we already have the signs and they've been paid for the crosswalk, the Galloping Goose by Matheson Lake. So I'm not too sure, I'm not having gone over this with Public Works, what they are. As far as the 20,000, I guess what I'd like to say about that is that when I first got elected last term, one of the priorities, it seemed like, from the complaints we were getting was that people wanted to do something to improve the road safety in Metchosin. And so we have received, since that time, between ICBC and the Vision Zero in Road Safety Program, approximately $80,000 in grants to pay for those signs and the crosswalks. And I know there has been some costs involved that we didn't expect, and the crew has, over the time, has learned quite a bit about repairing them and keeping them in good working order that they didn't, in the beginning, didn't know, and we had to get outside help with that. I've had a lot of people say that the signs make quite a difference in the roads. I mean, some people are going to speed no matter what. Seems like mostly the people that complain about the signs are the ones that like to speed. And a few weeks ago, when RCMP Superintendent Preston was here, and we asked him, what actually would make a difference on the roads, and he said that one thing that did make a difference is the radar speed readers. And as far as their cost, they cost about $10,000 each, or a little bit less, between 8 and 10. So I think that the projections on the cost seems a little extreme to me. Because even if we replaced all 5 of the ones that we do have now, it would be $50,000, plus just the time for staff to stick the posts in the hole. Anyway, I would really like to see that item not cut, because I think road safety is really important, and I think it would be really unfortunate, to not see that in the place when we're, willing to spend that kind of money on rabbits and bullfrogs.
So a question, Mr. Pat, is when it says electronic signs, is that a purchase of signs, or it's repairs, or is it everything?
Where
On page 22, where it's got electronic signs. Mm-hmm. There it is.
I believe that's the line item that is attributed to the cost of our staff fixing the signs per year.
So are these signs, is that a maintenance cost, or is it damage?
That's the maintenance and the staff time, yeah. And the damage and all, that's what that line item is for. Yeah. The fifth, I'm not sure, Councillor, which line items you're referring to for the 15,000?
Through the chair, I can clarify. The next line down says signs, and And last year's budget was 15,000, and this year it's 30,000.
Yeah.
So that's a $15,000 addition, which is on your page 3.
Right.
So I'm curious if it sounds like Councillor F is saying we have those signs already, so that we could cut that 15,000 out.
Councillor, clarification?
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about the electronic signs. The other signs, last year, the crew had to replace a whole bunch of the regular signs, not the electronic ones, but just the regular ones, because they were outdated and really just needed to be replaced. And so from what I gather from this is that would be continuing this year as replacing the ones that still need to be replaced. And of course, they get knocked down regularly and so on.
So it's the faded signs and ones that are decrepit or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll still speak to the electronic sign issue. Clearly, 2027 and 2028 numbers are incorrect. And whether or not we would continue to purchase them. I know one of the first things you told us around the table was these signs are a bit too expensive for us, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could take a look and have a conversation, come back and let us know what we should do about electronic signs. And I might just ask a different question. We'll get into it a little bit later, but the numbers on planning one time on page 3, you've got $172,000 and 854 in and 172,854 out. And I see that as well on the one-time sheets. But we have other numbers on the planning pages, different numbers. And maybe we can talk about that when we get there, but the planning sheets have much smaller numbers, so I'm curious how if it's all connected.
Did you want to talk about that now while we're in the operating budget, Councillor Gray?
Sure, you can look to page 23 and partway down the page at item 2610, 2700's contract services. And we see the number now has changed. It used to be $245,000. Then it cut down to 172, so now it's 72. And I'm just wondering, there's still an increase from last year's $55,000. And would that be in relation just simply to a rate increase, just that the planner's services cost more?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the contracted services line item for the planner, it includes the additional hours planned for 2024 for the work on housing, the housing legislation. So that I believe is why there's an increase. So from 1 day to 2 days a week.
I might offer that appears a little further down on the one-time housing initiative, 172,864. So I think that's accounted for there. And this is simply seeing an increase of the contract services on, if you will, the base services. And I wondered, maybe it was the rate increase or something. Anyway, that's one to learn about a little bit more because the numbers are uncertain. You can also see there, and we've heard from the residents out in 2026, 2027, 2028, the numbers are quite high, and I think they're continuing to reflect as if the housing work has to keep happening every year when in fact it'll be done by 2025. So maybe those numbers can be adjusted downwards. My other question on the same issue would be item 2220, planning legal, about 4 or 5 lines up. And it shows $20,000, which is unchanged from previous meetings. But I believe the increase from $6,000 last year to $20,000 this year, or 2024, would be included in the 172,864 down below one-time cost. So perhaps that number could be adjusted downwards.
Possibly, I'll have a look with that.
Thank you. Through the chair, likewise, the out years, 2026, 27, 28, and the legal could also be adjusted downwards.
Yep. Yes, we can have a look at that.
Thanks.
Anything else on operating committee? Councillor Gray?
On other sheets of the operating budget?
Sure, we're here.
Okay. Well, I want to say thanks first to our CAO, he took a series of questions from me earlier on the budget. I was hoping we could reduce the time spent around the table here, but maybe we can just flip through a few of these where I still have some questions and get some clarity. Again, I want to be clear, I'm all about what we talked about, what the residents have talked about, keeping our taxes low, but I want to be sure that we're responsible in terms of delivering services, and so that's got me a bit concerned. I'm seeing, for example, if I'm reading the sheets properly, we've cut $200,000 from our public works budget, and we've added $100,000 to fire department. So we're taking money from public works and transferring it over to the fire department. And I'm just anxious that some of these things are going to come back at us next year, and so they're not reflected yet in the budget for next year if we're just moving money over. So the first question I would have would be on page 11, general government. There's a very large number at the top of that page. You'll see it right away, $2,530,385 in miscellaneous grants in the operating budget. And I wonder what that number reflects. It could be, although I don't know, it doesn't seem to be the correct number, it could be the Growing Communities Fund, but maybe it should be noted somewhere else in the budget.
It's through at the top. Yeah.
It doesn't have a number.
2023?
Yes,
Mhm.
the year to date.
Yeah. I don't know, that's probably that grant that came in from the government, the one-time grant for small communities.
And then it could transfer to reserve somewhere.
Yeah, it's in a reserve, yeah.
Okay, super. When I look at the administrative salary line, the payroll expense, or administrative salaries, that would only be current employees, I expect. And I wondered, the number's gone up, of course, since last year, but what was the timeline for hiring a new CFO? Could this number go down somewhat if we don't hire for a little while, or what's the best thing to do with that $601,862?
Yes, I mean, if we take a time to hire a CFO, that amount of money, and you'll see this actually when we talk about surpluses,
Okay.
that would become surplus and available for council, for the general surplus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that line's only salaries, paid salary for current staff, I expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The way down below, we see insurance deductible, and I did ask about this, but I'm not sure if I've got it correct. The liability or the insurance deductible here of $10,000, I think that's paid at the beginning of the year. We pay it up front, so I'm not sure we can save the $5,000 suggested there. Just something to look into, I suppose. I don't think we can answer it right here, but our contract, I think, is that we pay it up front. So the $5,000 reduction doesn't necessarily work for us there. The next one is the FOI request. It's $10,000 last year and budgeted, and we spent $22,688. In the first 2 months of this year, we've had a request that will cost us $10,000 right off the top. So I'm concerned that $20,000 isn't going to do it for us. This is something we talked around the table here. I've thought, is there something we could do to change it? I think the consensus at the table is there's nothing that could be done. Simply spend the money. So I think we should probably return that to a higher number, as we've already spent half of it, and we're just a couple months into the year. I wish it wasn't an expense, but I recognize the importance of FOI.
The last meeting was, we had it at 25,000, so we reduced it by 5.
I wonder if any of my council colleagues would like to talk about that.
Maybe, what do you think? Do you think it's okay?
Mayor Little, is that enough
20 or
money?
25?
Given 2 months, we've got 10 grand already spent.
I don't know, I mean, it's not something that we want to spend, we're obligated. If FOI comes in, we must honor that. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know.
taking the advice of our CAO that this will be enough, hopefully.
Councillor Shukin, you have a comment?
I'm supportive of keeping it at 20,000. The one thing, as I recall my FOI training from way back when, is there is the potential of negotiating or talking with an applicant to hone in on what it is they want and even find what information may be available that doesn't have to go through an FOI thing. So if we run into a situation like that, that may be a route that we can take, again, to reduce our costs. So, yeah.
To have the contractor spend, we'll still have to pay for the contractor, but maybe reduce the cost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just want to raise it because it's an awkward thing to get into when there's some significant cuts here, so we won't have the same kind of surplus or money's available, I don't think, next year. The next one would be the janitorial contract on the next page, 2715. And I see that number, we had a budget 18,000 last year, and I sort of recall that there was going to be an increase in the hourly rate for the janitorial services. There were some discussions earlier this year, and I just wonder if we were meeting our contract need there. And I know last year we had something, but if it's just to be certain of that.
Yeah, confirm the contract.
Thank you. Then the prepaid taxes, we know that number is probably, well, this is when we have to pay the interest to individuals who prepay their taxes. It went from $4,000 budgeted to $10,000 last year. We only have 7,000, and I think you're going to look into that and find out, but I guess that number will have to go up.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for staff to return, so I can ask that question.
Perfect, thank you. So the next sheet's the fire department, and I want to acknowledge we had a lack of correspondence on this, and we've heard from residents here at the table this evening. I'm a real supporter of the fire department, but as a council or council members, we have a different role than just support or not support. We need to take a look at what's there, ask questions about value for money and what options there are. You know, job one is fires and medical response and helping out in car accidents and those sorts of things. But I'm just wondering what the best course of action is here. The fire department request is a $100,000 add to our budget, so 2.75% of our tax increase. It's offset, as I said earlier, by fairly large cuts to public works. But we heard, I don't know, it was the last meeting, about the idea of some of our firefighters attending solo to situations. And I guess the next day or the day after, I sent a note to the fire chief and to council saying that just can't continue. I agree with what we heard here from the table. The safety of our responders is paramount. I've worked a long time, as people know, in the healthcare system. We just don't do that sort of thing. It means less ability to respond perhaps, but safety of our volunteers and our employees is more important than responding earlier. But when I look then at the question of how we might do things differently, there's some big numbers here. The school manager, adding an FTE, when I read about that, I was hoping that we might get some information on what are our response times today? What will they be tomorrow? What problem are we solving? Is it daytime or nighttime? Just a document that would tell us about that so we could make judgments on these things a little bit better than simply, it's a good idea. So it turns out that's a bit of work to actually find out what problem we're fixing and how, what will change if we bring on a new hire. But things like a full new hire, or taking on school management, the school management's probably a temporary thing, but the employee is permanent. So I guess I'm concerned about that. Or if they're doing things like fire prevention education, aren't we doing that these days through FireSmart? Just a bit more understanding. We did have the one memo, but that arrived at a meeting, and I don't think it answers the kind of questions that or the understanding of the service to put such a significant addition of finances to our budget. But going past the one FTE, which is the $65,000 cost, I look at the something like the fire department honorariums, and they're listed here as costing us $12,000, but the fire chief has told us it's actually $14,400 per year. So that number should be increased if we're going to meet the needs of the request. So that would be one number that could change. That's going up, of course, not down. The next was the question of the fire hall telephone service, which cost $9,000 last year, and we're only budgeting $5,000 this year. We'll need to look into that further just to see what's going on. I know you reviewed all these numbers with the fire chief, but it looks from the notes that we've got that some of them are surprising even to admin about where they're at. So if we could figure out the right number for the telephone, that would be a good idea. I wondered, the software maintenance has been reduced markedly. Is the licensing for software, is that covered somewhere else, or is that decreased over time? Or I wondered if we know the answer to that. We can check possibly. The next one down is office supplies, $11,000 last year and $2,000 this year. And the suggestion is maybe the $11,000 number is wrong, but otherwise we're going to run short of office supplies. And I think the fire department deserves what they need in that department. The firefighters' allowance, I guess there's a $3,000 reduction from what was spent last year in the budget. So I want to be sure we're supporting that group adequately. I think the answer was that not a problem, except we're actually going to provide even less than budgeted last year. So it's really a drop of more money. I know the fire chief and our hired staff will be recused from being involved in the housing MOU. That was said the other night. But will the firefighters themselves need a little bit more money to sustain themselves to do that work that we're now asking them to do to look into housing? Or will that just be an entirely volunteer effort? The firefighter allowance, which is written here for $65,000. We spent $69,000 last year, and I see the ask has dropped now to only $47,900. So that number 65 could drop down to $47,900 from the latest information from the fire chief, which will be a help. The annual recognition event, a couple of grand was spent more than budgeted last year, but I'm understanding from the fire chief that that's okay. They'll be able to live within the budget next year. The course and seminars, I'm a little bit puzzled by there. There's a cut from course seminar fees and training materials amounting to $38,000 this year. And I guess that's okay if it's not needed. But again, I want to support the volunteers, support the fire department. A cut of $38,000 is a lot of money. I'm wondering if we're not spending it this year, should that number be added for next year's budget so we don't lose track of our need to support our volunteers. This is an area, I know it was debated a little bit at one of our other meetings, do we really want to support the volunteers? I happen to think we should, and I want to make sure we've got the money to do that. So if not this year, perhaps we could consider putting it in next year's budget so we don't lose that significant support. The next one was the building equipment and maintenance. We're cutting that budget by $2,000. But we required all of the $12,000 last year. So if we're intending on doing less maintenance this year, maybe we want to boost next year's budget by an amount, just so we don't lose it again. That's would add $2,000 to next year's budget and ongoing, of course. I looked at the firefighting equipment and can see that there's a cut there of $5,000. And I think the fire chief is going to review that, and I'm not sure if that's advisable. Well, that's all I have on the fire department. And I'm sort of moving through. If other people have other comments, that's great.
I do have some comment. I need clarity on some things. So we got a memorandum in February 8th. The very first meeting we had was November 23rd for the budgets, and I recall the fire chief when the question was asked, and I think I was probably the person asked about the 65 FTE, the response that she said was, you know, she needs help with the filing in the office and couldn't do it all herself. And so then fast forward to February 8th, we get a memorandum that lays out a little bit more detail of what is involved and what we need. We received as a council 5 reports last year, January to, actually we received them in March, but got them January to May of the call outs. We get those quite often, but that's where they stopped. It was just those 5. And it tells you the different kinds of incidents that the department does. And so on average, there's about 50 calls a month. And now we look at this, and so that is times 12, that's 600 calls, varying calls, most of them medical. On average, 5 calls are fire related per month. And so in the memo that was sent out, there's quite a range from 580 calls a year to 712. However, we don't have any stats on this, at least I have not seen any. So there's that. And then we hear about the solo response, which is frightening. I do know with other types of responders, they do go in pairs when there's knowledge of risk, or they wait until there's backup. What I'm struggling with is trying to figure out what the firefighter allowance is, the wages of the FTE, and the request for 2 persons at night. So is it 2 person every night, 365 days of the year, plus the, I think it was duty officer and what their stipend is, and I can't find it in the spreadsheet of the breakdown. And so my understanding is now, after asking some questions to the CAO, that the 2 persons will be staying overnight for a 12-hour shift, being paid a stipend each. The full cost of that, I don't know where it is in the budget, that's 365 days a year. The duty officer who's working on the weekends, or if they're not. And would it be something to explore for this FTE to maybe have a similar arrangement? And the reason I say that is only a year ago, the last 2 budgets previous to this, there was a request from the fire chief to have help in the administrative portion of her role. Last year it was $8,500, and we forewent that, and here we are now. It's a full-time, paid, full-in benefit job, and I don't know if there's going to be enough work or not, but I do recognize why we're being asked to have another person. But can we explore this further? Is there enough work? Is it filing all day? Is it fighting fires or mowing lawns, or what is it? I'm concerned that it goes away from just firefighting, seeing as how it's a union contract and they'll be very specific. So I have a couple of outstanding questions as to how the memo actually plays out and who they are, like as far as roles. Is it the firefighter allowance, or is it something different? Is it something that's coming out of salaries, or where are the monies coming from, I guess, is what it is. Because this budget on page 13 hasn't changed too much in numbers compared to what I'm seeing for the February 8th requests. So if we could have some clarity on what that actually looks like and some background information. We do have a contract with Dispatch Saanich that could give us our call-outs, times and responses, if that's even a concern. I know that it has improved because of the callback campaign that we worked on. Both Mayor Little and I sat on that team of women. And I'm really pleased to say that we are using the trained people that we have right here in our community. Surprised that most of them don't live here, because that was never revealed until recently. So if we can have more information of where the money is coming, how this rotation of volunteers that are going to be staying overnight and their stipends, and what the coverage will be on the weekends as well. And if that can be somehow worked out with the FTE, can we forego a full-time right now and go part-time, or can we have a stipend situation in daytime? Councillor Schuster.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donaldson, and through you, just another question on firefighting and the matter Councillor Gray raised about training and the reductions here. And I wonder if, I don't know whether we can ask the fire chief to address this at all, but I don't want to short or suggest we short the firefighters in terms of training materials and supplies, because I do see, like Councillor Gray pointed out, it's gone from 38,000 to a steady, basically 15,000 over time. So if that can be managed, great. If there's something we're actually losing around that, maybe that's something to rethink. So. I again, don't mistake me. I like seeing things reduced. It's just, are we going to pay for it in other ways? So, yeah.
Councillor.
Well, as was mentioned earlier, is that the big difference in the ability of the fire department to answer calls is the fact that we now only have one firefighter on the public works crew. And that's made a massive difference in the ability to answer daytime calls. And so I just want to speak again about that, because I think it's really important. As I mentioned on Monday, our department is quite low staffed compared to, for example, Salt Spring, which has just over double Machosen's population and 12 full-time firefighters and 3 fire halls. So, and as far as the budget, I know that the chief and Mr. Payette went over the budget, and I kind of have faith that between the two of them, they know how that, are satisfied that things have worked out satisfactorily to the fire department, and as far as council is concerned, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with you. I have faith in our staff as well. However, I would like to make an informed decision, and so if I have the numbers in front of me, it helps me better to understand how the stipend rotation is going to work, where the people actually are. But the numbers on this spreadsheet aren't indicative of that at this point. Or maybe somebody could shed light on that. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I get the point too about the public works issue. It's just rather having a sense of how this is organized, the deployment would be useful information. I think that we're only here because we're being asked for money. Otherwise, it would be all dealt with by staff. We have nothing to do with it, and it'd be set up. But when we're being asked to put money in, then it comes to us and we look at the materials and say, I don't quite follow how this works. So just knowing how it works would be a help. As the discussions that occurred before the cuts and reductions were made and the increases, we can see from the response to my note that, in fact, there's a lot of questions from the fire chief just about how these numbers work. So I'm just concerned that be looked at one more time to be certain that the reductions are reasonable and that the increase in spending is reasonable simply from the operations side. And then if the deployment is the other issue that you're speaking to, that I think would be helpful. Salt Spring Island is a little bit different than here. We have Colwood next door, Langford next door. We have mutual agreements. They're a little bit more standalone. But I take your point, comparisons to other fire departments is very relevant, and we want to do well with the group that we've got here, that's for sure.
Okay. Anything else?
Sure, I'll jump to the policing question next, I suppose. So, the council will recall that last year policing wasn't in in the package like this. It was a separate discussion that came up afterwards, and we said, okay, we've got the reserves available. How are we going to use the reserves? This year, the policing budget is right in the middle of our budget, as it should be, because now it's part of what we're doing and it's part of our protective services. But I'll point out, as I've done before, that we're zeroing out. So we're seeing no tax increase for bringing on the police. So I might just first say the public are expecting a tax increase from the police. And so where is it? We have a reserve, a 5-year reserve, and I understood. Thanks very much, Mr. Payette, for the quick response on all of these questions that I'd asked earlier, and you've taken care of a bunch of them. But on this one, we're in year 3 of the 5-year plan, and the idea is that we're going to use the reserve money to cover some of the cost, but we want to actually have some tax increase this year to help pay for some part of the police. Let's say a 3% increase related to the police services. That means that we would then have received the income for that this year. Next year it'll be coming. It'll be built in next year. And then next year we're going to want to see a 2% increase or whatever in order that we build it in, and the reserves are actually used for the purpose they were set up for, which is to have gradual increase in our taxes, not just them all to shoot up all of a sudden. And so we're not there yet. When I see it zeroing out, it means we're not using the reserves properly. In terms of softening the blow. So we do need to get to that sooner than later. Through the chair, Mr. Payette, you suggested, well, let's evaluate it after the budget, after we're done. I think while it is a bit challenging given the nature of the RCMP's planning and how they sort out and do their hiring and their year end, I think is different than ours. We do need to do that work. Otherwise, I fear we'll be in the middle of summertime. And maybe we need to, have a new review the budget, but where is the tax money at that point? We're past the point of the taxes. So I'd like to get onto this now, and with our finance officer returning, we can, or not finance officer, but finance admin, we can probably get on that. I just can't find the sheet of paper that we used last year that showed us what we're expecting to do last year and this year. But I would like us to have a tax increase there, in order that in a few years we're not looking at like 8% or 10% or something just for police. So that's just a thought, get that done. The other would be, I don't know the planning for the RCMP building, but we'll have to put money in at some point for the new building in Langford. And whether we do that with a reserve now or put some money into a reserve, I wonder if you might consider that. Just it's going to be new cost to us, and whether we should start collecting money for it now, I don't know, but your opinion of that might be helpful.
Excuse me, Mayor Little, can you comment on that? We are not paying into the new building, we were a tenant,
No,
correct?
so the new building, we won't be co-owners of the new building. We'll carry on the same arrangement that we have now with paying for rent for that new building.
Thank you.
Great, so that sounds good. It'd just be that the price will go up. That Langford's taking a big cost to put that building in there. So the next item was...
just to clarify, so it's not just Langford, it'll be Langford, Colwood, and Highlands.
Oh.
Langford, Colwood, and View Royal, and Highlands, and the District for Tourism will be contributing to the structure of the building.
Very good. So we'll pay rent to cover our contribution.
Correct.
Thank you. Well, the next one is bylaw enforcement, and I'm just noticing there that we spent $35,000 last year on bylaw enforcement, and this year we're reducing that. And I just wonder if that fit with council's priorities around bylaw enforcement. So less money next year. We didn't necessarily achieve a lot this year. It's a very difficult area to have successes, but we're dropping our budget there, and if that makes sense. Councillor Shukin, I don't know if you have a view of that one, reducing our expenditures for next year.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. I do have a perspective on this. I feel like it doesn't really matter to some degree how much you spend on wages, contract staff. It's the will and the determination to enforce that is really what is going to create, the opportunities for enforcement and actually doing it. So I'm fine with staff's direction and the move on this. So thank you.
Thanks very much, through the chair. I appreciate that. We'll just ask for less legal help this year than last year. If we proceed that way, I imagine the legal costs will be going up just on the hourly basis, but we won't be able to use as much legal services as we did last year. Now, we do have money in administration for legal, but that's a different, the two budgets are separate, and when we give approval at the end of this process, you can't mix the two. They're from two different departments. I think we had earlier, there were proposed cuts to emergency services, but we're not doing that. Those cuts have been withdrawn, I see on page 19. So while I understand people are trained up, we're going to leave those numbers the same, and that's okay by me. Now, unless others have comments about that, I jump to transportation services.
Everyone okay with that? Yeah, okay.
So jumping over there, that's page 21. We're back. I still have a question about the consulting fees, on item 2300 near the top of the page. My understanding is that those fees are for consulting engineering. For example, when the CRD cut and patched the road up a ways here, they didn't meet our standards, so we hired an engineer to go and look at that, and things were corrected to our standards. And so I don't think we have, the idea is to have no money to do that. So I'm just curious if that works for us in the end. We don't really have qualified personnel on staff to do that work. Don't we need some money as a consulting engineer availability?
Mr. Paya, will that be included in our asset management consultant that you were considering?
Part of it.
Okay.
Part of it will be this year. I noticed it hasn't been spent 2023 either, that line item, consultant fees. So I wonder if that was like a one-off or one time. I don't know why that $30,000 was in 2022. And if it was even spent. That was just the budget for one thing. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that we may well be short there if we need that kind of consulting service.
Yeah.
Chair, it looks like from the way I read this is that $30,000 was allocated, but the actual it wasn't spent. So, and then it wasn't spent in 2023. So, and natural presumption was that if it hasn't been spent over the last 3 years, then it wouldn't be spent in 2024. So I'm also fine with leaving that as is.
It actually hasn't been spent. 2021 and 2022, it wasn't spent either.
The new equipment maintenance budget, at the very bottom of the line, we had $10,000 available. We spent $8,356, and we're dropping it to $8,000 this year. I know we had a higher number in our earlier budgets, and I'm wondering, consistent with my earlier comments, I wonder if if we knock it down this year, perhaps in 2025 the number should go back up, so we continue to do the equipment maintenance that's required for our vehicles. The road safety line item of $25,000 is, I think, no longer here, and I think the information was that it's going to go over to one-time capital, and I suppose it just depends on the size. If it's small projects, it probably needs to be in operating. If it's big projects, it would go into the capital. But
yeah, we can also capitalize, like if they're 5,000 each or whatever, we can combine them and capitalize.
Thank you. So a very big one is the cuts to road service maintenance and shouldering of $70,000. And I take your point that we're going to do an asset management plan, and so perhaps this will be delayed. I think it was the conversation at the council table anyway that we were going to do more maintenance and less paving. So this is where we've knocked out $70,000 for both that and shouldering. So I'm just concerned that we're going to come up short there. And then once we remove the money this year, in order to get it back, we have to have a big tax increase next year. And so again, whether that money should be reflected in next year's budget so we can see the impact. And then there was this issue of the shouldering being neglected, and whether or not we're behind on that. And if the staff are happy and you're happy and we're all good, I'm just, perhaps as I say, the 2025 budget should go back up to where the plan was in order that we have the money available when the asset management plan is further down the road.
Councillor Gray, are you talking about the 3 items where it says ditching a culvert, shouldering rolling shoulders?
I'm talking about item 1100, road service and maintenance. Went from 140,000 down to 100.
Okay.
And the shouldering, which went from 60 down to 30. So again, just looking to make sure we've got the money to do the job. I think while people said, well, let's around the table said, let's let the roads degrade. We might find that through our reviews and consultant work that that's not a good idea. So we want to be ready to jump in there and maintain them. The next item here would be, let me see now. Well, we talked about the electronic signage, and that's a 0.6% tax increase to fund those new signs. And I understand there's some possibly benefit there, but we're also hearing people don't like them, and people are knocking them down. Whether we want to keep spending in that regard is a question for council. I guess I'm on the side of not spending so much on those anymore. Neat idea, but didn't really work out in terms of people pushing them over and having to replace them and damaging them.
Through the chair, I was wondering maybe Councillor Eck could comment based on the expertise from ICBC. Am I not correct in assuming that they were suggesting these based on the data that they have?
Yes, that's correct, in their road safety. And that's why we got the grant money from them, is because they promote that as helping with road safety and with speed. So I think I explained it all before.
Well, moving on to the planning and environment numbers, I can see the invasive species numbers are coming up in a couple of places in the budget. So that right now we've got the $22,000 proposed in 2024. 20,000 of that is for rabbits. I see it's also in our one-time budget where it was last year, and I think that that's too much money. So I'm wondering if we should remove it from here maybe and put it in the one-times, but reduce the figure overall.
Mr. Pierre?
I'd like to speak to this one.
Sure.
So the contract from last year, I've done the same contract for this year for starters. So whatever we paid last year, we're starting off with the same amount this year. It's because, council can, hope for a lot of things, but it depends on the contractor and their time and their availability as well. So he's agreed to match last year's time and effort, and then we're going to reassess on the requirement for if we're going to spend any additional money on the rabbits. So I mean that does leave extra funding for other invasive species control in the budget, but if council wishes to reduce that to the 10,000, we could do that as well.
Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, just thinking about this a little further. If it's almost futile to spend, not the right amount, because of course, if you don't spend the right amount, you don't do anything with the problem. And in talking with some of the growers in the local area, they did notice a difference for sure, but the rabbits are back. And if we left it another year, they'd be back in force. So I'm in favor of actually spending what we have in the budget right now. The one thing I feel like we do need is a rabbit management plan, and to understand where that goes in the future years, because again, if we don't do it properly, it's wasted money for sure. The other thing that I think that is incredibly important to address is the bullfrogs. And we need to make sure that we're on top of that. 3,000 seems to be doing things in terms of management, but we have to make sure that is maintained. So, thank you.
So in regards to the rabbits, the one thing that we were not able to do last year, just because of the timing, is we weren't able to follow up with a second round of administering. And I would like us to be able to do that this year, closer together, so that we intercept the breeding time. And then I think that would be a better investment of our funds.
If I could speak to that.
Yes.
What happened last year is the contractor came, did a sweep through, dealt with about 150 rabbits, and then he returned in accordance with his schedule and availability and did a second sweep, and he got 20 to 30 that time. And then homeowners then trapped as well, and so there was trapping once they departed. So a lot went on last year, and we did actually knock it way back. And the point that I was making earlier to council on a different meeting was just to your point, Councillor Schuck, we needed a plan, and that just putting money out there, next year will be 40,000, next year 60,000, and just goes on. I think if the contractor is available for his time of last year, let's get him and repeat it. But I don't see the point of adding another $10,000 in the budget when the trapper is not available. So I would argue we should remove that and just do what we did last year, get the job done. I'll just mention the bullfrogs. Mr. Pyatt's contacted Mr. Orchard. Last year we were late making the contact. We're on it, and he's arranged to come and get on it straight away.
So Mr. Pyatt, just to give you a bit of background of rabbits in Victoria, we had a significant number at the university. It was quite dangerous. And then one day they disappeared. We had a similar situation on Meridian on the highway near the hospital. Same thing, they've disappeared. So there is a means of eradicating the situation. And if you happen to have any contacts with any of those organizations, that'd be great. But if this particular contractor has a rabbit management plan that we could use, that we could get rid of these creatures that are causing great problems for not just our farmers, but that is significant, but also our residents and our municipal grounds. There's some nice ginger ones out there right now, so there's a whole new crop.
So our contractor is the one who did both those other jobs. Yeah. So he's the local.
The expert.
He is, yes.
Okay, so if we can get a plan from him, that would be helpful, and then whatever that cost is. So we really do need to deal with this.
It's basically sounds like it's set up already for this year, and I don't think his availability will be much greater than what he's offered. But anyway, I'm offered 10,000 to come out there. The other thing then I wanted to mention was really the school site. We deal with the requisition changes. The school site, I wondered, the leasing agent fee is not in the budget this year, but we do need somebody to be getting the commercial site rented there, and I'm wondering if we've engaged a leasing agent again this year, in which case some number should go in the budget for those services.
We have engaged him the last couple of weeks. So where is that?
It's on page 27.
I don't know why that was left blank.
Thank you.
There's money in there.
I think it got left blank because we were moving it around, hoping we were on to something different, but we're back at that.
Yep.
And then the only other comment about the school, I guess the school or our facilities, I mentioned before about getting sharps containers, where the plan is the preschool may well be going into the old school over there, and that's just where people have been finding needles. So we do, I think, need to have the ability to pick up the needles for people to dispense of the needles, whether they're diabetics or whether it's a drug use issue, and getting some sharps containers in some of our bathrooms just so it's a matter of course and people can dispense with them and they won't be dangerous to either the children there or to users at the people at the using the old school or anywhere here in our facilities. So I'm just putting a word in for that again. If we get a price on that, it might be helpful. And then I didn't see the period promise numbers in here, but we should add those to the budget as well. And that's about all that I've got on the operating budget, except one question way back at the beginning. The revenues are down this year by something like $382,000. And I wonder what accounts for that. It may not be an answer we have just right here at the fingertips, but it would be helpful to know. That's about 10% tax increase. So where did that, why did the revenues drop and what happened there? It's under the miscellaneous revenue, so it's hard to know. I think it might behoove us to know so that we understand the dynamics. Thank you.
Okay, so if we move on to page, is that good for everybody, for operating? So if we can move on to page 31, and the next memorandum we have, Mr. Pitt, you could speak to that, please. It's to do with our 2023 surplus.
Okay, thanks through the chair. How am I doing here? Good?
Yes, we can hear you.
So surpluses are derived from revenue in excess of what was budgeted, one-time expenditures that were not spent, and expenditures that were lower than budgeted. And so I won't read through it word by word, but I'll hit the highlights. Bullet number 1, wildfire deployment, net revenue $300,000. So that's a surplus. We are recommending the full amount of that surplus be allocated to the fire vehicle replacement reserve. Engine 6 is on the list for replacement in the 5-year capital budget. I'll just go through all these and then comments after. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
Investment income is up, as I indicated earlier in the operating budget, $250,000 more than budget. We're suggesting an amount of this is needed to cover budget shortfalls from 2023. And then the windfall could be allocated $150,000 approximately to one-time expenditures for 2024. PILT is up $40,000 or $84,000. We're anticipating that PILT will actually be reduced in the next year or two. Perhaps that funding, it's recommended that that surplus be held in a new operating reserve in anticipation of that reduction in PILT. The one-time expenditures, there was $140,000 of unspent expenditures in 2023. These are technically surplus, but I'm recommending that for 2024 that we carry this over and for this year's one time. And similarly, there was $37,000 of unspent expenditures in the one-time public works budget for the roads and culverts management plan. And as you know, I'm working on a asset management plan for 2024 with some grant funding. The grant funding I don't believe is 100% grant funding. I think it's 50-50, so that funding can move over to 2024 and help offset our portion of that grant to get our asset management plan in place. Expenditures, most of the under and over expenditures in the operating budget are covered by policy. And budget shortfalls, for example, at the school and possibly some at the fire department, that's to be determined yet in the auditing process, will be covered by the surplus investment income as stated above. And administrative salaries, bit of a question earlier from Councillor Gray, what happens with the unspent? And so in this case, that's $69,000 from 2023 could be placed in a reserve to cover future admin staffing costs for 2024. So about $150,000 is what we're saying for 2023 for one-time projects.
Councillor Gray?
I just wanted to ask, I see you're recommending that the $300,000 from the wildfire deployment go to the fire vehicle replacement reserve. And I can see from our report last year that that reserve is down $70,000. So that makes sense to at least bring it up to zero. Then it would be at the minimum level. But is there any sense in putting that money in capital reserves if we're thinking about building a new fire hall, or is it better spent in the vehicle, or is it a toss of a coin? How do we figure that out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor Gray. And the engine 6, the replacement of engine 6, that's not a light expense. That's north of $500,000. So we do want to build up that reserve, but at the same time, we have this looming building feasibility study coming, and so it's not really a toss of a coin, but I mean, eventually we're going to pay for both assets, and either way, they're going to be coming out of reserves. And I mean, 6 to 1 and half to the other is going to happen on both reserves. So I don't know if there's any benefit in putting that amount of money in capital for the building or the fire truck, because they're both going to happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Pia, can you explain how long we would keep one fire engine?
I can give you my understanding of the regulations, the Canadian regulations, and it boils down to insurance and underwriting. And so our main engine, I believe, needs to be newer than 20 years, or we get whacked by underwriters and insurance. That's critical. The secondary, third engines, assets, the 20-year mark isn't as critical, but in our asset management planning for the fleet, there's good practice and good history of when to replace large pieces of asset or the fleet, large pieces of the fleet at certain timings, or the cost of maintaining exceeds the benefit of replacing the vehicle. So, and that's what our accountant does. He does that fleet replacement 5-year plan, and so that's my knowledge of it. I mean, the fire chief's here, but if you have any specific questions.
Just asking because this will be a 15-year-old truck that probably hasn't got that many miles on it.
I don't know the year.
It's 2009. Okay, so can we move on to one-times and, is that next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no more questions on that?
I think we're good.
Okay. Now we're going to get fun. So one-times, these are the items that we've been working on collectively for 2024. So I've listed them on a worksheet, and once we get to a comfortable level of prioritization and agreement, they will move over to the operating budget in that respective area that Machosen keeps them in. So I thought we could go through the line items one by one and have a good discussion about each one. Starting with number 1, the new phone system. That's been completed, and the phones are basically on the way. So I consider that a high priority.
Mr. Pyatt, question.
Yes.
Can we get new hold music for the phones?
Oh, yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Building regulations, bylaws we're working on. That's pretty much complete. I believe that we're just waiting for an additional invoice or two from a consultant. So that one is a high. contract management plan for the buffer land has been recommended by council. And if you would like me to explain that, or if anyone else would like to explain it, but that's on the one-time, is that capital or one-time?
One time it looks.
Okay, one time.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Do we want to discuss each of them or? go-
Yeah, I think we should discuss them, because if I go through them all and then we might miss track a couple of them.
So the phone system, that's not an ongoing cost, it's just a one-shot deal.
That's correct.
Great. The buffer land plan, just how do we account for this? I think the idea is that this would be an ongoing cost of $20,000 to $50,000. Or is this, we're gonna do this one thing and maybe never spend any money on it again? What's the best thing to do with that?
We had talked about the monies, well, it was suggested to take the monies from the taxation of the industrial park and put it into reserves for anything related to the buffer. Now, this looks like it's just a one-time plan, but maybe Mr. Payette can expand on that?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
touch on it. My understanding is that we really need to know exactly what we're gonna zone or use the land for. So that's kind of paramount, and to understand how we're gonna manage it afterwards. And so one begets the other. So the plan will help us make that kind of decision and help the committee to understand that as well. So that $25,000 would go towards a consultant that can help us get to that point.
Councillor Shukin.
Thanks. I think Mr. Payette explained that really well. That's, I believe, where we're at and what we need. So thank you.
If I could just add that
Sure.
on timing, we are now waiting for technical information on storm management plan. And so, we're eagerly waiting to see some of that information. And then we can use that information to be included in the RFP for a contractor, so they have some parameters to work with.
That's great. Councillor Gray?
And then as a result of that, it may be that there's, I'm just asking, no further expenditures on the buffer land. It's a one-time, we're finding out whether or not the question that we have to answer, that I still fixed on what the buffer land working group asked us, which is, do we want to put resources into this? And I take it we're not answering that here, we're just getting more ideas, and then we're going to answer that question. So it's a one-time cost because it may not continue.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Development accessibility plan. So if council's aware, we are mandated legislatively to have an accessibility committee. We are part of a regional committee, and we're awaiting information from the committee and lots of good work that they're doing. And in anticipation of that fine work, then this funding is available to act on the plan, to review the plan under the act. So,
Mr. Payette, we put aside $10,000 last year for this. So is this a carryover?
it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, crossing guards. So it's a 2-year project at $10,000 a year. Crane, truck crane. So this is a work safe item for our staff to have a mini crane on the back of a vehicle, so they're not lifting over a certain weight. And so I consider that a high priority. Invasive species management, so that we've talked about that, so we have that in the operating budget as well. I have it in here just for discussion purposes, and to determine if we're going to leave it at the current contract, which was last year, was at 10,000, or add another 10,000 for the 20,000, and I believe we have the answer already.
20.
Yeah.
So we're allocating $20,000 without a plan. We have a plan with our contractor, which is $10,000. He's prepared to come and do that this year. We have nobody else to come and do this work. There's no one. We can tell you from the last year's attempt to find there are not whacks of people. And we've had experience, the council has previously, with a contractor who killed one rabbit at terrible big expense. This is our guy. If he's only available this year for the $10,000 worth, we can get $10,000 and reduce our budget. So,
Yeah, the only thing I might add is he may be available to do more. I haven't actually met him. He's coming on site soon, and we're gonna have that discussion, so. But I didn't want to lose the contract.
no, absolutely, that was critical to get in touch with him. Okay, well, I'll leave it there, I suppose. Just so it doesn't appear that, for me, it's an issue of management of this thing. We're not going to eradicate them, and we have to figure out how much is the district going to put into this. And we're talking now about almost a 1% tax increase to do this. So I'm not sure if there's community support for that or not.
But I am gonna try and get this as a one-time item, so if I can pull it out of the operating, I'll ask our accountant, but if it's not an ongoing contract every year, then maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, but it appears it's a 2-year contract, in my opinion, so maybe we can pull it out of one time. Okay?
Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Is there any limitation on keeping this amount, but from this amount we get the service of the extermination, but also access the contractor for a plan? The plan doesn't have to be, pages and pages on nice glossy color title page. But I think in dialogue with Mr. Payette and maybe even some of the ag people, we could get that as part of the service, if possible. Right? So, yeah.
Okay.
Next is the hydrologist from last year, carryover for 2024, and we're still working on securing a consultant to do that work.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yes.
Thanks very much for keeping this on the list here. I think as we move ahead and get more details on the plan for the stormwater management detention pond, having access to that contracted help is going to be really important. And I just will point out again is there's the detention pond, but there's the system too that is integrated and really critical to understand as well. So it sounds like Mr. Hurley and yourself are continuing to meet, and but just having that other eye of expertise, I think, would be possibly quite helpful this year. So thank you.
Okay, the buffer gate needs to be replaced. It's not a large item. Laptops are on the list and a high item. Sports court. So as we move along in our journey with our new acquisition of the school and
Councillor Jones, sorry.
Yes, Councillor.
I interrupted Mr. Payette. Sorry, the Teams video integration for council meetings, and I heard many people ask if they can join virtually, and then the new sound system for the chambers. That's a pretty steep one, but I guess if we're we've talked about it. Yeah. So, anyways, that just caught my eye, but anyways, might not be able to get out of that one, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does that include the mics for people to hear us?
Okay.
The sound system, everything's one.
Yeah, so that includes mics and microphones for new microphones for this table, microphones at the back for Ms. Hanson or whoever is at the controls, and also at the other table as well. So it's microphones all along, and we've heard about this, and I thought that council had agreed that we had put a big emphasis on community outreach, and it's important that people hear what we're talking about. So I think it is expensive, but that's the reality of it.
So the Teams video, is that just for, like, if we are absent, we can zoom in for a meeting, or is it for people at home to, they can already see us?
Could be on the screen, and council could be on the screen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I had that system in my previous location. It's excellent.
Yeah, quite a few of the boards
Yeah.
use it.
Okay, we're at sports court. Everybody okay? Yeah. So, okay, here's my little speech. So we're moving along in our journey, our acquisition of the school, and now we're thinking about the outdoor facilities and programming them and using them, and the court surface is not that safe, as you know. So this would be a multi-surface product that would be installed onto the court. Okay.
And will this be a grant? It says here something about housing legislation grant, is that right? No, wrong one.
No, wrong one. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
if I can
possibly,
find a
yeah.
grant, I
Yeah,
certainly
we looked
will.
into that a few years ago, and I think the chief has been looking at those too. They come up once in a while through Healthy Communities or BC.
Mhm.
Still not, yeah.
I've heard contrasting views about multi-use versus just get a proper surface on it for single use. Apparently that's more beneficial. So there's that question. But I wonder if this one should be grant only. In other words, let's dig around and when we can get a grant, let's do it, but not before. That's my suggestion anyway on that.
Councillor.
It just seems to me this could be something that if we are going the grant way that could come out of the Growing Communities Fund because it really is beneficial for the community. We have in the past, the fire chief applied 2 different years to try to get a grant to pay for it, and we didn't get either of those grants. So it would be really nice to have that surface that could be used for just to have some good healthy outdoor activities in the community besides just walking. I think it's a lot of people would use it if we had the various markings on there. We've looked into these sport court surfaces and they're really pretty amazing.
I think at one point we even talked about putting some basketball hoops in there too.
Yeah, they got everything.
Yeah, I saw that just yesterday, I guess, over at where Dunsmuir School is. They've got a basketball hoop in there now, and that was being used, so it's good. Great for the neighborhood. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, municipal legislation bylaw updates. So we have reviewed the list of bylaws that we're going to be bringing to council. It's quite an extensive list, and so we're allocating a cost of $40,000. Some of this most of it will hopefully come out of that housing legislation grant. I can't predict the future, but I'm hoping that most of it can come out of there. Some of the bylaw upgrades are loosely related to the housing legislation, so I'll have to get a comfort level from the grant administrator as to what I can spend and what I can't, but for now, it'll come out of that grant. Okay.
Councillor Gray, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I guess on that one, this is where the numbers we can work at it away from the table, but the grant is for $172,000, and here we're spending 40, but we seem to have lost then the planner time to do the housing work. So it's just a question of reconciling the worksheets to this sheet to understand where the $172,000 goes. And on that point, we'll have work for the planner this year on housing and next year on housing. So that 172 has to bridge over 2 years if it can, and it would through this mechanism, I think.
Perfect. Upgrades to the municipal hall, there are no end of upgrades we can do. But these items were noticed in our previous review and allocated a cost of $10,000. And so these are the more, pressing items. So they're recommended. And the cross-country bike park, which is just adjacent here to the fire hall, to do some upgrades, beautification. The discussion on this item could revolve around the feasibility study of the fire hall, and maybe this is premature spending, so I put it as a medium request. So it could show up in 2025.
So may I make a comment on this? We have a line item in the budget every year for $500 for the park.
Mm-hmm.
So in the interim, can we just maybe use that instead of
course.
this?
Yeah.
Because I think the beautification is pretty minimal when it comes to costs.
Okay.
Until we know differently. Yes?
So will 500 cover the cost of moving the sign and repairing it?
Well, how expensive are the public works guys?
Well, oh no, it's got to be repaired, right?
Well, the sign itself, I don't know that signs would be that much, $40 maybe. I'm not really sure. I have to go and measure the sign. It's double-sided, that's the only thing. That's where the cost is. But the holder of the sign is good. It was handcrafted by an artist. It's metal. It just needs to be moved. And then somebody has tagged the sign. You're correct on that. And then it needs, the boarding needs to be extended to the end of the jumps. That's about it. I mean, if we could put a bench out there, it'd be great too. But you know, it doesn't have to be a fancy like the memorial benches or anything. But you know, the kids are using it, and the parents come and sit on the ground and whatever. And, yeah, we have a budget, and we'll learn to live within it if we can. I think 500 would be okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And meridians at the school site, full length of the school site from museum to the store.
Mr. Pye, or through you, Councillor Johnson. Meridians, what is meant?
Okay, so this was an idea I had.
Oh,
So never mind the faces. Well, with the community garden people, it's just an extension. This doesn't need to be a high priority at this time, but there are some meridians delineating the roadway and the parking lot. And Katie Nelson and I did a walkabout, I think it was in the summer or early fall, and talked about, you know, removing some of the soil out of there, putting something better in there, and putting a pollinator hedgerow. A lot of this will be dependent on the rabbits as well, but it is something that would actually fall in line with a lot of the work that Katie has been doing around here on the grounds, as well as the native plantings at the school museum. It is a form of beautifying the area. I know we still haven't had a village core meeting and envisioning or anything like that, but it's just an idea. I've looked at it for years thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great if the kids got out and planted daffodils or something like that, but it's just an idea. It's not high priority, but it's something that we would need to, I think, look at some point, especially if we're going to start looking at how attractive or not the school is right now. You know, we've still got to do some painting of lines on the parking lot and that sort of thing too, so yeah.
Okay.
That's what
Great,
that is.
thanks for the explanation. I just want to throw out one other thing to consider. I was meeting with the MAC executive on Saturday. They mentioned crosswalk and whether that's some sort of possibility as we look ahead. So that's a bit of a deeper issue. Be interesting to have Councillor, but maybe not for right now because we've got. But again, just in terms of Happy Valley Road in this area here, I just want to raise it. Yeah.
Councillor.
We have engaged urban systems because they're going to look at the exact placing of the crosswalk by the Goose Crossing at Matheson Lake, but also just to give us an idea of what the best positioning siting would be for a potential crosswalk linking up the two municipal grounds and the parking areas. Because now that we have events and we are directing people to use both sides of the road for parking on the grounds, so but it is kind of in the works.
Awesome. Thanks.
Which I have mentioned to him.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, and the final one is.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. We're still on the same page?
Yeah, just on the light covers. That's an item I believe we should keep on the list, but as a low priority as we move through the dark sky project. Okay.
Councillor Gray.
And then up at the top, we have two that I think we missed: budget software and organizational review.
So the budget software, as you can tell, our budget software is a whole bunch of spreadsheets meshed together by merging. That's 20-year-old, practice. It's difficult. As a new guy coming in, it's incredibly difficult to navigate through the budget software and all the spreadsheets. So I'm throwing this in as an opportunity to look at getting some budget software that's come, with the times kind of thing. So I'll leave that one on the desk and see how we deal with if it's affordable or not. Okay.
Mr. Pant, in that stream, can we, at some point when we get to that place, have it so that we can actually add changes live on a computer as we go, rather than shuffling paper and
That
whatnot?
would be outstanding.
Yes. I'd like to get out of the dinosaur ages.
Okay, the organizational review is another one of my items. To take an opportunity to look at the staff workload and the number of staff, the location of staff, also any other kind of reviews in the organization for efficiencies. If that would usually take a consultant from an objective point of view. So I'm suggesting that $50,000 would hopefully be less. That would get us a consultation review.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
I want to speak in favor of this, and I think doing something like this you will benefit from having a third-party review, because there's a potential of ongoing savings. $50,000, even if it is that much, I think is money well worth spending. So it is something that we talked about doing in 2023 on our first, for the 2023 budget, we decided not to proceed with it. So.
But this doesn't come out of surplus, does it?
I think it does.
It doesn't say. So I don't know.
Well, I believe it could come out of surplus. I don't know if there'd be a grant or a reserve for this, so it would be a surplus item.
Okay.
So I did a quick add, Councillor Donaldson, of these numbers, and it reaches maybe $100,000 more than the dollars available. So this, as Mr. Pratt mentioned, it's a question of prioritizing this list.
Yeah.
So there's a list, but then it may be that the priority would be different than what's here. And I'm not fighting the priorities, but saying that I think it's worthwhile to prioritize them now. Next step.
Yeah, next step, prioritize them, and I'll draw a red line in at the amount available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess I'll speak about the organizational review. We haven't had a conversation about it through the chair, Mr. Pant, but we are a very small staff, and I get your point, Councillor Shukin. Doing a review like this may reduce costs. I think actually we do a review, it'll increase costs. I think we know that we have a very lean organization, and the likelihood is that this will lead to higher costs, not reducing costs. But I wonder if I'm open as well. I will say, Mr. Pratt, to your recommendations without conducting a review. Once you've been here for a little while, you may say, hey, we need another staff person. And rather than spending $50,000 to find that out, you may just say, that's what I need, and a good argument putting it here. Similar to the question that we're getting from the fire department. I think it's clear that fire chief says we need it. Now I'm just asking, can we get the detail? And likewise, if you come forward for a new position or two, that's the same process. So anyway, more to talk about.
So an organizational review, does that include the fire department and public works? Like our whole? Okay. I asked because I was in conversation with somebody in the fire service who does things like small scale services reviews and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So for prioritizing, would obviously I prioritized more things already, but based on conversation tonight, I can reprioritize and bring it forward to our next committee meeting with the red line. Okay. Great. And then the next page will be capital items that could potentially be coming out of grants or reserves. And so I believe we could go through these the exact same way. I've highlighted items in yellow because I talked to our analyst today, and he's recommending those could be one-time items. So you know, keep in mind that we still have to analyze the items. So today we can talk about their importance, their relevance, and I'll take them away and do the prioritizing for the next committee meeting. Municipal hall heat pump. We talked about, and we have quotes. 18,000 would get us some HVAC high efficiency system in our building. And today we noticed there might be some grants available for a portion of the cost. So I'll leave it at 18,000, but potentially we could find some efficiencies like 20-25% grant recoveries from the green initiatives. Council chambers, the heat pump here for $12,000, same discussion. The trails master plan, council has been talking about that. So it's on the list.
Mr. Paya, this is something that I believe that PTAS could actually undertake. There's quite a bit of expertise at that table. The framework is already there in the OCP, and I'm confident that if they created a working group like we've done with the last couple, that they could, in short order, brainstorm something together.
I'm kind of of that mind as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
That said, we're likely to benefit by having some expertise around mapping, and we probably will need to pay for some of that. So
yeah, I was going to mention the same thing.
Right, and didn't we just bring somebody on board that has some mapping background?
Oh, on PTAS, yes. True.
And maybe a few others we discovered that do.
Yeah.
Let's explore that.
Well, without having, had deeper discussions, I really hesitate to put a burden on that person. We're just, she hasn't even been to her first meeting, Councillor Dobbs. So, but.
Yes, but once you establish your working group, there you go. It's the first thing on the agenda. Mary Lou?
Well, I'm a bit hesitant to take this off because looking back at, I think it's Appendix 1 in the OCP, it looks like it was typewritten. So I don't think we have a electronic copy of that. So it would mean inputting all of that information back in there. I sort of think that's a bit beyond PTASK.
Yeah.
But I think that they could help direct it, but that's a lot of work. That's an awful lot of work. Can I scan?
No.
Oh, thank you. Through the chair. I've done a number of trail plans and master plans, and I know the technical part of taking the data and putting it on a map, and then professionally, finishing the product for a friendly user product. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of money and some very significant software, and we don't have that in-house. So we should, if we're going to do it properly and have a nice result, I'm sure that the data will be well done by PTASK, but the result, maybe we should have some money just for that at least. Great.
Perhaps this is a question for PTASK, whether they could take it on and whether we can leave the trails, or what's it called, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as is, and add an addendum. That might be easier or cheaper. It wouldn't be as polished, of course, but it might be a way that they could handle it. So my point is that we should ask PTASK.
Yeah.
Ask them if they want to do the project, or maybe we strike a working group if they don't. Because clearly it sounds like we need to do it.
Ask them if they want to take it on and what needs to be done.
Councillor Shukin.
I think there is a larger discussion here. I mean, what Mayor Little points out is kind of a possible alternative to doing a whole new plan. But yeah, I'm a little hesitant to do that just because we've got an old plan, a really old plan and an old plan, and then we're going to do something maybe here, either here or there. Maybe. I think it's great. This will be on the planning committee meeting on Monday, so we can talk about it further. There is a whole big question about scope, and especially if we're talking about parks as opposed to just trails, and whether we can add active transportation as part of that as well. I know there's a separate plan that's going to be developed, hopefully. So yeah, there's a bigger discussion here, I think. So we'll talk about it on Monday, and I mean, maybe we don't have to make it specific. I could see maybe cutting the budget a little bit, but what Mr. Payette says is true. Like, yeah, I mean, we could maybe ask our new member to take this on, but she still has to have the software at home, essentially. So that might be a tough one. But
yeah, I guess the first place to start is having a working group of some sort, whether it's a subcommittee of PTAS, to start scratching out the information that needs to be updated, because some of it has become redundant. We've accomplished a lot of those trails. Yeah. Start adding to the list, reprioritizing those collectively, and go from there. Councillor Gray, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just that this will move off the capital sheet, so it'll go into that priorities, and so we set a chance to get a kick at it next go. So that would be helpful to hear on Monday what we discussed there.
Okay, moving along there.
Yes.
Okay, the actual trails development for $20,000, that is the trail of discussion on Duke Road.
And again, Mr. Payette, your thoughts about whether this could come out of the gas tax reserve?
I'll try.
Okay.
I mean, the gas tax is related to transportation and upgrades and rehabilitation of roads. So trail development, I believe, could come under the term rehabilitation. So I'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
But failing that, it could come out of our other community.
As I recall, though, I think the gas tax, is that still what it's called? I'm not sure.
I can help out.
But yeah, sorry, I think active transportation is one of the categories. So thank you. Yeah.
It's now called the Community Building Fund or Community Works Fund, and it does have options for networks of parks, fitness trails, and bike paths.
Fire hall feasibility study.
Oh, can I just drop back? That's $20,000, and we've talked about the Duke Road being $10,000 for a survey and $10,000 for
phase one.
I think phase one, and we have $10,000 in the operating already of $10,000. So maybe this can be reduced to just to one $10,000, not 20.
So are we at
trails
30,000 or 40,000?
No, I'm saying it would be 10,000 already existing in the trail development in the on page 25, and then here is 20. I think it should be just 10.
If I may, I thought the operating amount in the trails that's always been there year over year for trails in general. So I don't know.
Hasn't been used, it looks like, for a number of years. So.
The 10,000? Yeah, it didn't get used last year.
Or probably the year before.
Yeah, there's money there.
Yeah.
My colleagues on CTASC won't like it. They like to keep that operating thing, but they're also cognizant that, you know, we have to be mindful of our, fiscal situation. So
You're talking about the 10,000?
yeah, it's
It's been 10,000 for a long, long time.
Yeah. If there's a chance to use some of the community building grant that has just been sitting there for who knows how long, I think this is a worthy project to do that on, and very much in the name of active transportation, I think. But we're going to do a prioritization exercise. So.
Yeah, we prioritize, and then if we're not going to use it, let's put the 10 grand off into public works, where it can fill the other problems that we're creating.
Sure.
Yeah. Great.
feasibility.
Fire hall feasibility study, that is, I believe that's carryover from last year, $50,000. So that is a high priority. And just to remind, if we can possibly generate any grant funding for the feasibility study, we're going to try and do that.
Is that what it means by additional here? Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay, because we were asked 80,000 last year. And it went down, and then there was no movement on it, it just sat.
Okay.
Nobody did any RFPs or anything. This is why there's temper split, because
Well, our
it
intention
was tied.
is to try and get grant funding for the feasibility study to assist in
Or
our amount.
so how much are we going with then, or? I thought
I didn't do the initial review of what the feasibility study would cost. If it was 80, then I believe that it probably should stay at 80.
It was 80, it dropped to 40. It was at 40 for many months, and then we got an additional grant, so I think it's 30 at this point.
Right.
30 new money, there's 10,000 available.
There's 40 of the initial. There's 10 on the grant, which I think is 50. But I'm just saying that unless my math's wrong or I'm missing something here. But I don't believe we'll get much of a study done for $40,000.
Okay, well, just to say that the price was 40, and then we got help of another 10, so it didn't increase the price, it was to reduce the cost.
Oh, it was to reduce.
Yeah, but it'll come back on the operating, and if there's more clarity, or if you think that it needs to be more, and the estimate was incorrect, fair enough. I mean, it's what do we need, is really the question there.
Well, clarify that.
In my view, anyway. And there's 10 available.
So on Monday night, when this got voted through to go with the CMHC and the various other groups, they're not putting any money into a feasibility study then?
That's my point. Is that we're going to be approaching CMHA and BC Housing to help offset the cost of the feasibility study. I can't commit to that, but that's our intention. But I think that the priority is to get the study done. So let's not lose track of what's available, and if we can offset it with grant funding, great.
Thank you.
Chair, I think it is a priority for us to do, as well as we had talked about using the Growing Communities Fund for that $40,000 that we were talking about last year. So there's the Growing Communities Fund that we could use for the feasibility studies. And if you look at the terms of reference, feasibility studies is something that can be used.
Yeah, we were supposed to talk about that particular grant a couple of meetings ago, and we didn't, so we probably need to schedule a meeting specific for that to not whittle away, but to actually have a plan what we're going to do with that 2.4, whatever it is now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think at the moment we have this money available, it's sitting there ready to be used to get this done, so rather than all that complication, let's just use the surplus we've got. But once we put it in the priority list, we'll know what's what. It's a high priority.
Recall that last year's surplus money for one-offs is moving forward as well as the 150. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah,
when I bring all this back, it'll be.
And then the point was, we don't need to touch the communities fund. If the vote on last week says we get money from CMHC, then we won't be touching the communities fund. We want to sort of do it by order of bank account, basically.
Okay, bridge repairs, $40,000. Roof for the municipal hall, $115,000. Road safety project, $25,000. And school improvements, that's indoor work on a number of items for $75,000. We've discussed that previously. I've just condensed them into one line item. Roads and culverts management plan. So that will be part of the asset management plan. 50,000. So that'll be grant, or yeah, that's grant funded. It's on the list. Fixing roads, patching, windfall, Sundance and Lombard. I believe I discussed that last meeting. Would you like me to go over that, or are you satisfied with that discussion?
Just one question to Mr. Payette. You've noted the gas tax for these repairs. Could that not just come out of our regular road reserve, or is it? Mm-hmm. Sorry, you maybe did cover this, but
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Well, because what we're going to do is patching on the roads that we will be surfacing.
Okay.
And so, we can use the gas taxes to do patching because it's part of the actual rehabilitation. So that's what.
Yeah. Why not?
And then we don't have to use the reserve.
Okay. Good.
That word rehabilitation really works well.
Okay.
So the roof at the Emergency Operations Center is low, but it's on the list pending a feasibility study. The fire hall roof as well, we'll keep it active just in case. And seismic upgrades as well. And then we got the fire hall on the list. And that rounds it out.
And I guess if it's 2024 budget, we would remove the fire hall then?
Yeah, I don't believe we'll be doing it in 2024, so
No.
we're moving it to the right.
Did you want to go through this, or are we done this one too, right? Oh, we're done this
Yeah,
one.
that's it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I must say, we've got to this point, you know, I think fairly well. We had a great process of gaining information. I gathered a bunch of information, council gained information. I was able to, I would call collate it onto a worksheet. And basically I have excellent marching orders from the committee, so I can take it away now and start putting it into the actual formal document.
And if I might add, we've missed the shoreline plan, which in previous years was estimated 25,000 as a one-time cost. Whether that's the right dollar amount, maybe Mr. Pett, you could take a look and figure out what would be the right dollar amount for shoreline protection plan. I appreciate the discussion. I am concerned that we're shorting our public works, and we may run into problems with our reserve contributions, and our one-times next year will be very small, quite possibly. And so there's still lots of concerns with the budget here. But we'll look forward to the next meeting where we'll get a good look at all those changes. That'll get us, I think I'll be better focused. Thank you.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, with the shoreline protection strategy, we had talked about asking our neighboring communities what they have in and extrapolating from their plans. Did you happen to reach out to Colwood on that?
No, of course we haven't yet approved the idea of proceeding with it, so when we do, I will.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
I just want to take my hat off to Mr. Payette. He's been here, I think, just 2 months, started January the 7th, it's now March the 7th. And I think a remarkable achievement, just given how fresh you are to Machos, and especially thank you to engaging staff in this work. And where I think it would be wonderful to get to is we have an operations budget that we're confident in, and we don't have to spend, I don't know if this is our fourth meeting? We tackle the things, hopefully next year, that are new. We have a clear understanding of what we need to operate the district. So I think it seems to me we're well on our way to doing that in a way maybe we weren't last year. So.
But one of the big things that will be the difference is having information before we start, rather than add-ons halfway through and then going out, just like 15+%, and it just was all over the place. So that is not an appropriate way to manage a budget system, in my opinion. I would have liked to have had all the information at the beginning. We're still asking for information at this date. So if we can get better organized before we hit this, from January to now, we could have been done, but Mayor Little and then Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I also want to extend my gratitude to Mr. Payette. We asked him at one of the early meetings that he came to to go back and cut the budgets. He met with all of the stakeholders, all of the employees, and then he's come back and in consultation with them, changed the budget from 15.3 to 7, just over 7%. So especially considering you've been here only 8 weeks, I think that is highly commendable and with many things.
Councillor Gray.
Just to correct the record, I don't think council did ask for the SEO to cut the budget.
I did.
We did not pass a motion here to do that. It was a surprise when it came, and those changes are here. And I'm still looking through them, wondering what impact they'll have. But and then we discovered that some of the information is a bit tricky because I weren't totally aware of them. So lots to work on. But very much appreciate the work. I'm just remaining concerned that we may be shorting ourselves beyond what is reasonable.
I agree with you, we may be, and I did sit down with CAO to say, you know, we really do need to listen to what the public is saying, what our staff is saying, and things that this council's been dealing with in the last year as well. So I really believe we're not out of the woods yet, we're getting there, and I appreciate in the short time that we've been working together now with a new employee that we are starting to get there, but I'm still cautious because we're not finished. And we saw today with the amount of pings and the amount of emails and phone calls I know I'm getting too, it's important to listen to our people as well. So, thank you for that work. I would like to open the meeting up to the public that is left. If anybody would like to share some thoughts, that would be welcome.
Hey, Council, I'd love to share some thoughts. Eric White, 4290 Chosen Road. When it comes to the rabbits, how about instead of hiring a contractor, the city buys 10 or so traps, and as the farmers or citizens need them, rent them out like a library, provide a course about like proper ethical ways to deal with it, or, you know, call me up, I love soup, you know, that kind of thing. We'll figure out a way, but I think having someone come year after year and solve a problem that we as a community could be solving through our own initiatives would be redundant. Education, let's teach people to fish and not give out so many fishes. Okay.
Thank you.
So just to follow up, that could very well be part of a plan if we did, again, whether it works or not, buy a certain amount of rabbit traps. So maybe that's something to explore.
That is something I was exploring with another farmer on another invasive species. We also had a member of the public come to, I think, has spoken with Mayor a little bit. Also, she's a lady that would attend one of the stalls at the farmer's market as well, and she has a rabbit business. So she was very interested in this whole topic that we're discussing now. So she's local, and maybe she would be somebody to engage with as well. Anyone else?
Thank you. Brent Donaldson, Challister Court. I echo what this last speaker had to say. It makes sense, especially if we can cut the costs. Two things. Certainly the sport court. The Chosen always gets around projects. I think of the community house a number of years ago. When they first started out, the Mighty Garage Sale was awesome. They generated lots of income. Certainly if the preschool is going to be using the school grounds, I'd certainly like to see maybe a fundraiser to do a sport court, get the community involved, sell tickets, maybe have a dance, something fun. So often people come to the podium and ask for money, and it would be nice to be able to have some maybe interactive, enjoy, you know, maybe the scouts or whatever. But I think we could do better from a community point of view. Certainly we might have funds, but it'd be fun to see if we could do some fundraising. Secondly, with regard to the roof in the municipal hall, I watched it for the last couple of years. Probably about 3 years ago, was no moss on it. And certainly our house, where we had a roof put on about 10 years ago, and it looks like our lawn now. So there are options to maybe push off, maybe replacing the roof with some organic moss remover. Certainly you can buy it from industrial plastics. You don't even have to get on the roof. So I'm just thinking about pushing things out. This is a big hit. You guys have been under a lot of pressure this year from from the public, and you've really worked well with the budget. Certainly, maybe we could look at that. Unless it's leaking, I don't know, we don't want to get to the point when it is, but if it's an opportunity to push it out. And if we do look at a roof, maybe we could look at a metal roof and install some maybe solar on top. Thank you.
Welcome, Gaten. I'd like to know, and like I've said, it's great that the school is getting used for courses. So is there a revenue and is there an expense on that school being used for courses? Does that show up anywhere? Is that a yes?
Well,
Or
I've never seen anything. Do you have record of that, Mr. Payne?
well, we would have a record, I don't know it myself personally, but we do track revenue and expenses for that use. Like I've said, personally, we're gonna be working on a business plan for the school this year. And, the building's new to our staff, so we're gonna do a tracking system, and we have to start doing data, and like you're saying, so we can project the future. So it's a good point. Yes, we keep the data, and it's public information, so we will make things like that available.
Oh, okay, so I guess what I'm not understanding is that it being used for courses right now, will that end if those classrooms get leased out?
No, our intention is not to end the revenue generation of training and possibly leasing out the classrooms for daytime use. We're going to try and multi-use the classrooms, so we maximize the revenue.
Okay, and just because it kind of bugs me, I'm really okay if you toss the master plan on parks and trails for a year. They haven't updated the information anyway. You can add a piece of loose leaf and add the whatever, but I don't think parks and trails should be a priority on a budget that's like that. They've had their own way for many years. We've got lots of parks and trails. We're not in dire need. So I would just suggest putting it off for another year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So one of the reasons to upgrade the master plan is so that we're not creating trails that are kind of putting other trails out of the priority list. As an example, Harris Road Trail goes in, but another one gets ignored. Duke Road Trail goes in because there's a petition, but other ones that people have spoken about get ignored. So that's where having a priority list needs to be reviewed. So it's sort of the cause of that, not to create more than we need, and certainly the way of going has changed, the same with our roads and the road uses. Those things have all changed, but there's just been so much negativity over roadside trails that we need to actually get organized on what are our priorities, as opposed to just shooting from the hip. Okay, so the almost last thing on the agenda is my report. Just wanted to bring everybody up to date on the West Shore Parks and Recreation, some upgrades they've been doing, seeing as how we are one of the owners and we pay quite a bit into this. So they've done an annual pool maintenance involving replacement of the leisure pool filter and various chemical line upgrades, and over 500 volts on the water slide, because those eventually erode and become unsafe. The reception desk is a new one that's been installed, so it's a sit and a stand desk that improves the workspace for the staff. The HR has expanded. They've added on one more person. They have an incredible amount of staff there. What they're finding now is they're putting out a lot of job postings. They're continuing to grow, but there's fewer and fewer applications. Just like everywhere, it's hard to get employees. They're starting to train within, and so they're doing a succession plan that way and diversifying their staff. So there's different rules that they can do when times are different seasons, that sort of thing. Spring Bake Camp's coming up March 18th. Lots of different things for all different ages: film, TV, acting, soccer, skating lessons, hockey, horseback riding, all sorts of stuff. Access West Shore Society, which was formerly known as IACTI, has created their own society now, and they are the accessibility group. Excuse me. We're just in the process of designing a logo. I've got two artists actually chosen that are taking it to a different level, so I'll be passing that back to the group, see if they like that. Their Facebook page is being, which I think they've got that already established. Bylaws are done, working on the website, and of course the logo is in progress. Come May 21st to June 1st is National Access Awareness Week. And so it came up at our meeting about maybe we should do something, and they were talking about wheelchair basketball, and I said, that sounds like a lot of fun, I'd love to do that. And of course now I've got a job to do. When you show excitement, you get volunteered to do something. So anyways, more to come on that. We're not sure exactly where that will be, if it will be at Royal Bay High School or through the rec center, because we're talking to Bobby Neal down there. But we'll be engaging with Simon Cass of the Wheelchair Sports, and we'll see what happens, and maybe you'll be invited to come and either watch or participate playing basketball in a wheelchair yourselves. That's the part I think would be fantastic to figure out. There is an online survey for Capital West. We've already talked about that a little bit earlier. And I attended the close night of the year, as did Councillor Gray in the West Shore area for Our Place Society and Pacific Centre Family Service Association, which raised over $55,000 locally, and Mayor Little was out in Souk as well, participating in the same night. It was a beautiful night for a walk. The weather was much better than last year. So with that, we've got the pinks, and I appreciate all the effort people have put into writing some very, very good letters, some good points, some common themes, and definitely respect the feedback, whether it's negative or positive, that we are getting people engaged, and maybe not with all the information, but still it keeps us on our toes and striving to always move forward with doing better things for our community. And so with that, I would ask to move to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor F. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.